What's going on, people? Listen, I want to deal with the mark of the beast since a lot of people are talking about the mark of the beast, and many think that the mark of the beast is the vax, which I disagree with. I don't believe the mark of the beast is going to be a barcode. I don't believe the mark is going to be a rice-sized microchip. I don't believe that the mark of the beast is 3 numbers 666 on the back of your hand or in your forehead. I just don't believe all of these images that we see. But I do believe that that mark of the beast will be a branding or a tattoo. Just like in the times of slavery, when the slave master branded their property. They branded the slaves so that anywhere that slave went, he was identified. They knew who he belonged to. They had a very distinctive brand. So when they looked at that slave's brand, they knew exactly who he belonged to. Now, I'm going to read the entire chapter of the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation. Starting at the first verse, it reads as follows. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. This sounds like a government. It is not a literal beast. This is all happening in the spirit realm. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So this is not an image, or better yet, a real monster coming out of the sea. This is dealing with a government. Just like the government that we're dealing with now that has authority to break the rules. And people are allowing this government to break the rules. Although it go against the Constitution, people are just laying back, letting things happen like these mandates. But it says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. The second verse says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. Keep in mind, this is not a literal beast. This is all in the spirit. The third verse says, and I saw one of his heads, as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. All the world wandered after the beast. Now, is this referring to that one world government? That one world government where one entity rules the world? That one world government that we hear quite often in the media. So they are making preparation for that, preparing the minds of the people. So when this mark is introduced, it's not much of a surprise. The 5th verse reads, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name. Look at the number of times it's mentioning blasphemy. and how the Most High is being blasphemed or spoken evil against. And his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. I'm going to read that 6th verse again. And he opened his mouth, this is the beast, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nation, that one world government. And notice they are attacking the church, and we see that happening even to this very day. The 8th verse reads, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. Think about it. I'm going to read that again. And I want you to listen to what's being written. And this should give you some type of insight on that mark of the beast. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. Now, for those of you that say that Yeshua is not real, he never existed, you in for a world of problems. The 9th verse says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Now, I spoke on patience just last night. But this is a verse that we hear quite often quoted by the so-called Black Hebrew Israelites, which I completely understand where they're coming from, but it's taken out of context. Because you have to look at what's going on surrounding this scripture that says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity, and he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. The 11th verse says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. Now one came out of the sea. This one is coming up out of the earth. And he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. He had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast. Look at that word worship again. And he's dealing with the earth. He's not dealing with just one nation. This individual is dealing with one world government, whose deadly wound was healed. The 13th verse says, and he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. So this individual, this beast, is going to be able to perform miracles before your eyes. And we see so many now that's into witchcraft, into the dark arts. And some actually have that power and that authority to do miracles. But we are in a state of mind where many of us don't believe in spiritual miracles. We doubt it because we don't see it. And we've never seen it. Or many of our minds are conditioned not to receive it. But in this day, you will know definitely that he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. And this is not talking about any type of nuclear warfare or missiles or things of that nature that I've heard people write about. The 14th verse says, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast. Now, this is now leading to the mark of the beast. Although I think much of what we see happening today is preparing your minds and your spirits and your emotions for that mark. So when it's introduced, many are going to receive it. Many will have no problem submitting to the beast and to its mark, just like they're doing today with the jab. It says, the 14th verse, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. Now, this is an individual that was probably more than likely stabbed. Something happened to him. He had a wound, and a deadly wound, and he recovered. This is referring to an individual that has the spirit of a beast. So when you hear these images in the book of Revelation, keep in mind that these are visions that people have. It's like when you go to sleep and dream of snakes, or you dream of a lion or a dog. Those are spiritual symbols that have meaning in your dream. But God has to give you the interpretation of those images in your dream. See? So they're now about to make an image of this beast. I remember just in New York City, like when they decided to redo the Tappan Bridge. Guess whose name was put on that Tappan Bridge? Governor Cuomo. There's things around New York City that's got Governor Cuomo's name on it because he was the one that caused it to happen. This right here is no different. So, and that image, that Tappan Bridge is an image. But this time, I'm going to tell you what type of image I believe it is. I remember in my early walk with Christ, when I studied this or I read this, I always tried to figure out what type of image this was. And the only thing I could think of was an inanimate object that we see like on TV that all of a sudden start talking, right? Which sounds ridiculous. But in this day and time, it's not ridiculous because I'm getting ready to show you. Just kind of hold tight. The 15th verse, I'm going to read that again. And he had power to give life unto the beast. Or better yet, he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. In other words, whoever refused to worship that image of the beast shall be killed. So they're now going to take it to a totally different level. So you got people now that's receiving that jab, that's refusing that jab, and now their job is at risk. Things are taken away from them. You're not able to travel. They talked about a passport that proves that you received that jab and you're able to travel. But if you didn't receive it, then there's certain places you can't go. Right? Well, it's no different than what they're doing here. But yet, they became more crafty in this. Now, I want you to pay close attention to this image, which many people think is an inanimate object, which in reality is an animated object, right? And I'm going to tell you what I think this image is. Now, this image of the beast is going to look like or resemble the beast or the person that's in authority, that's given certain power. It's like you see these entertainers and celebrities with bobbleheads. You know, they'll put a bobblehead on their dashboard of their car that looks just like them. That's an image. And the bobblehead just kind of moves, but it looks like the person, the celebrity, that it was designed to resemble. I'm going to read that 16th verse. Or better yet, let me go back to the 15th verse again. And he had power to give life. And I'm going to talk about that life in a few minutes and tell you what I think that life is. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. What I think that image is a robot. A robot is the only thing I can think of. A robot can be made to look like an individual. I've seen robots that move and act like humans. They have robots now that is actually sexual with human beings. They have one for women and they have one for men. Robots. They have robots that move around and clean your house, that serve you. And me growing up, I only seen things like this on the Jetsons, the cartoons. So now in 2021, it's a reality. So I think the image of that beast is going to look like the beast, that person that's in position of authority and power. It's a robot. I personally think it's a robot. The 16th verse says, and he causes awe. Now keep in mind, it's referring to a he. Is this robot a he? Well, look at what's going on with the genders. You know, where people now are in a way forced to refer to a man as a she and a woman that's born as a woman as a he. So it's no thing to refer to a robot or the image of such as a he. It's like a police dog. That's a cop. So if you kill a police dog, you killed an officer. Right? So it's no different. So, and he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand. It's very specific, in your right hand or in their foreheads. Now, that mark, I believe what that mark is either a branding or a tattoo. I don't think it has anything to do with microchips, but I would say that back in the 80s when I worked for Digital Equipment Corporation, I knew all about these microchips and these different things that we see the images of, the barcodes, and people having them implanted into their skin. I remember that back then. It just wasn't made public, right? And at the time, we thought that could be the mark of the beast. But I remember reading an article at work when I used to work for Digital that says that there will be a rice seed microchip implanted in you, and you'll be able to do your banking. You'll be able to, when you go to the hospital, it's got all your information on that microchip. It tells everything about you. It's able to read your temperature, right? You can actually go to an ATM-like machine and kind of like, just like we do with our access cards at work. You know, people have access cards at work and they can just scan it and they can get inside the building. Well, you could walk up to an ATM machine like you do with your debit card and actually get your medication out of there. You don't have to really deal with the pharmacy. That machine would actually be the pharmacy, right? So all of this stuff had already been here, already been in the mind of someone, even back in the 80s and even before then. But it's just new to a lot of people now, right? So this is really no real mystery. But when it comes to that mark, that image that's going to be in your forehead or on your right hand, I think it's a branding, just like they did back in slavery, to be able to identify who you belong to, right? So either you belong to Christ or you belong to this beast. The 17th verse reads again, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. The 18th verse says, here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And some or many have interpreted that as being 666. But the 17th verse says, and no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark. It was a mark. It's not a microchip. It's a mark. It's an actual mark, a visual mark to identify you. And it's the mark of that beast. That beast created that mark that you have to have, that everybody is forced to do. And in that time, just like now, you're going to have people that's going to get upset because you choose not to have that. And they're going to make you feel guilty. They're going to say you have children. You're willing to allow your children to starve. You're allowing your loved one, your auntie, your senior, to suffer because they're sick and they need their medication. And because you received that mark of the beast, now you're going to be ridiculed and even be put to death, according to the book of Revelation. Right? And that no man, and that's even including women, because women is also considered man. She's one with man. She came from man. She's a part of man. And regardless of how much you try to divide or separate yourself, you still are a part of man. You're not an individual. You're not an island to yourself. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Again, the 18th verse says, here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now, one last scripture I want to read is the book of Acts, the 5th chapter, reading the 27th to the 29th verse. And it reads as follows. And when he had brought them, they set them before the council and the high priest and asked them. Now, keep in mind, this is similar to what is going to take place and the choice and decision that's presented to you. You're either going to do what Peter did, Peter and the other apostles, or you're going to submit to the beast. The 18th verse says, saying, did not we straitly command you? Now keep in mind, they're talking to these adults like they're children. See, this is somebody that feel they have that kind of power and authority over another man. Did not we straitly command you? Excuse me. Did not we straitly command you that ye should not teach in this name? And behold, ye have filled Jerusalem with your doctrine and intended to bring this man's blood upon us. In other words, you need to stop teaching what you're teaching. I remember I was invited to this church to speak here locally. And this is like back in, I say, the 90s. And it was on Martin Luther King's Day. And before they invited me to speak. And when I went there to preach, I was told before I went into the pulpit, they told me, this is what we want you to teach. We want you to say something about Martin Luther King, right? So it didn't matter what God put in my heart. They're telling me what they want me to say, since they invited me there. So fortunately, I came up in a church where I'm not one to just, I've always been quite stubborn and really don't follow the rules. And got up and I spoke and said my little piece, and I think I said maybe 3 words about King, and that was it. But whatever God put on my heart, that's what I spoke on. And I hadn't been back at that church since. And I could tell that they did not like what I had to say. See, when you stand up and speak the truth, man, people don't like that. They want you to heed to their itching ears. But I've always been a person that refused to heed to their itching ears. So in the same way, we have to take that same mentality when it comes to, or better yet, when we're offered or commanded to do something that's against the will of God. And I'm going to read the 18th verse again, saying, did not we straitly command you that ye should not teach in this name? And behold, ye have filled Jerusalem with your doctrine, and intended to bring this man's blood upon us. The 29th verse says, then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than men. I repeat that. We ought to obey God rather than men. So whenever you present it with a choice or decision, you have to make sure that you choose right. See, I ought to obey God rather than men. See, yes, men were put in certain position of authority, but when they overstep their authority, that's when you have to make that choice to choose God over man, especially when you're being forced to do something not only against your will, but also against God. So that's my take on the mark of the beast. I think the beast is going to be a robot, an animate object that's able to speak, and they gave power to this robot to make choices and decisions. You know, it's like if you're dealing with a robot cop, and that cop tells you to stop and halt. It's no different than you dealing with a stop sign. An inanimate object. You're driving down the street, you see a sign, you better stop. That sign becomes a law. Because if you go through that stop sign, you get a ticket. You're reprimanded for that. So people's minds are already conditioned and trained for that. But those that endure to the end, those who are able to stand firm on the profession of their faith, those that endure to the end shall be saved. So feedback, tell me what you think. Click on my website in the description box and order some mercs. Until next time, I'm fearless.